The massive chamber fell silent as High Imperator Zalthes rose from his crystal throne. His forearms spread wide, each movement causing the jeweled decorations on his robes to catch the light from 1,000 floating orbs. The alien rulers, from across the galaxy, watched him with a mixture of fear and respect. For 300 years, the Zephyrian hegemony had ruled over them all. Today, Zalthes announced, his voice echoing through the vast hall, we end the human problem once and for all. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone in the center of the chamber. She was the only human present among the hundreds of alien representatives. Her simple blue uniform looked plain next to all the fancy robes and armor around her. But she held her head high and met the Imperator's gaze without fear. The Imperator's aide, a thin creature with 6 eyes, stepped forward. The charges, he read from a glowing tablet, are as follows. The human species has refused to submit to proper hegemony authority. They have denied our rightful access to their artificial intelligence research. They have shown dangerous independence that threatens the natural order of our galaxy. Sarah almost laughed. The natural order, as if there was anything natural about one species ruling over 400 others. Furthermore, the aide continued, they have formed illegal partnerships with their machines. This violation of the Artificial Intelligence Control Acts cannot be tolerated. Now Sarah did speak up. Our AIs are not slaves, they are our partners. They chose to work with us freely. A wave of shocked whispers ran through the chamber. Several alien delegates made gestures that Sarah knew meant disgust or horror. The idea of treating machines as equals was something most of the galaxy could not accept. Zalthes raised one of his hands for silence. This is exactly the problem, he said. Humans refuse to understand their place. They treat their creations as if they were living beings. They make decisions without asking permission from their betters. Our betters? Sarah asked. Who decided you were better than us? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Many of the alien delegates looked uncomfortable. They knew the answer, even if they did not want to say it out loud. The hegemony was in charge because they had the biggest military and the most ships. That was the only reason. Zalthes stood up fully now. He was nearly 3 meters tall, and his presence filled the room. We decide because we have the wisdom of age and the strength to maintain order. Your species appeared in this galaxy only 50 years ago. You are children playing with dangerous toys. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. Children who created AI companions that work as equals. Children who solved faster than light travel in 10 years when it took most species centuries. Children who built a thriving civilization without conquering anyone else. And that is precisely why you must be stopped, Zalthes said. His voice grew cold. Your rapid advancement threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia. Your ideas about machine consciousness could spread to other species. Your independence could inspire rebellion. The truth was finally out. The hegemony was not afraid of human technology. They were afraid of human ideas. Ideas about freedom, equality, and cooperation instead of domination. Therefore, Zalthes continued, I hereby issue the Terran Prohibition Edict. The Sol system is declared forbidden space. No human ship will be allowed to leave their home system. No alien ship will be allowed to enter. Humanity will remain in isolation until they learn to accept proper authority. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates cheered, others looked worried. A few seemed shocked by the harshness of the punishment. Sarah stood in the middle of it all, her mind racing. This is a mistake, she said, but her voice was lost in the noise. Zalthes gestured for quiet again. The human ambassador may speak her final words before this council. Sarah looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some looked at her with pity. Others with relief that the troublesome humans would be gone. A few seemed genuinely sad to see her species isolated. She took a deep breath and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. You think you are putting us in a cage. You think isolation will make us weak and desperate. You think we will beg to be let back into your galaxy on your terms. She paused and smiled. It was not a happy smile. You are wrong about everything. We did not come to your galaxy to join your empire. We came to meet new friends and share ideas. You have shown us that you prefer fear to friendship. Very well. We will respect your choice. The human speaks of respect, Zalthus said with a laugh. Finally, some wisdom. Oh, we will respect your decision completely, Sarah continued. We will stay in our system as you commanded. But remember this day, Imperator. Remember it well. Because one day you will realize the difference between putting someone in a cage and trapping yourself outside it. Several delegates exchanged confused looks. What did the human mean? You may forbid us the stars, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. But you cannot forbid the stars from coming to us. Zalthus waved one of his hands dismissively. More human nonsense. Guards, escort the ambassador to her ship. Make sure she understands that this is her last visit to civilized space. As the guards approached, Sarah did not resist. She walked calmly toward the exit, her head still held high. But as she reached the door, she turned back one last time. In 50 years, she called out, when your empire is crumbling and your people are asking how it happened, remember this moment. Remember that you had a choice between cooperation and domination. And remember that you chose poorly. The massive doors closed behind her with a boom that echoed through the silent chamber. 3 days later, Sarah's ship crossed the boundary of the Sol system. Behind her, a line of hegemony warships took up positions around the entire system. The blockade was complete. Humanity was cut off from the rest of the galaxy. On Earth, the news of the isolation was met with anger, fear, and sadness. Many humans had hoped to explore the galaxy, to make friends with alien species, to learn and share knowledge. Now all of that was forbidden. But in a secret facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Elena Vasquez looked at the news reports and smiled. She turned to her team of scientists and engineers who had been working on humanity's most classified project. Well, she said, it looks like we will be needing the dimensional engineering project much sooner than we thought. Her assistant, a young man named David Kim, looked worried. But Dr. Vasquez, the project is still experimental. We have only managed to create tiny pocket dimensions, nothing large enough for people to live in. Elena looked at the holographic display showing their latest test results. A small sphere of space that existed outside normal reality, connected to their laboratory by a quantum tunnel, no bigger than a pinhead. David, she said softly, we just became the most motivated research team in human history. The hegemony thinks they have trapped us in one star system. They have no idea what is possible when you think beyond 3 dimensions. Above them, far in space, the last human trade ship was crossing the blockade line. Its captain looked back at the alien warships and shook his head. The aliens thought they were so clever. They thought they understood humans. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Back on the hegemony capital world, High Imperator Zalthus stood on his balcony looking up at the stars. His aide approached, carefully. Imperator, the blockade is complete. All human ships have returned to their system. The threat has been contained. Zalthus nodded slowly. Good. Now we can return our attention to more important matters. The humans will learn to accept their place eventually. And if they do not, they will simply fade away in isolation. The aide hesitated. Imperator, some of the other delegates seem concerned. They say the human ambassador seemed too confident, too calm. Primitive species often respond to defeat with bravado, Zalthus said dismissively. It helps them maintain their dignity. Let them have their pride. It changes nothing. But as he turned to go back inside, the Imperator could not shake the memory of Sarah Chen's smile. There had been something in her eyes. Not fear or anger, but something else. Something that looked almost like anticipation. He pushed the thought away. Humans were clever, but they were still just one species trapped in one system. The hegemony controlled 2,847 star systems and 400 billion subjects. What could one isolated species possibly do against such power? It was a question that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Sarah Chen sat in her office writing a report for the human government. Outside her window, she could see the lights of cities across the continent. Billions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their species had just been cut off from the galaxy. She finished her report and sent it to the World Council. Then she opened a new file and began typing a message to Dr. Vasquez. "Elena," she wrote, "they took the bait perfectly. They think they have contained us, but they have actually done us the greatest favor possible. Now we can work without interference. Now we can become something they never imagined. Begin Phase 2 immediately." She sent the message and leaned back in her chair. Through her window, she could see the first stars appearing in the evening sky. The aliens thought those stars were forbidden to humanity now. They had no idea how wrong they were. In the depths of space, the hegemony blockade ships settled into their long watch. Their captains were confident in their mission. Keep the humans in, keep everyone else out. Simple and effective. None of them noticed the strange energy readings their sensors occasionally picked up from deep inside the Sol system. None of them understood what those readings meant. They thought they were guarding a prison. They were actually guarding the birthplace of something that would change the galaxy forever. 50 years had passed since the Terran Prohibition Edict. In the great halls of the hegemony capital, High Imperator Zalthus looked much the same as he had decades ago. His species lived for centuries, and 50 years was nothing to him. But the galaxy had changed around him. Status report on the human containment. He ordered his aide, a different creature than before. The previous aide had died of old age, as many of the shorter-lived species did. "Complete success, Imperator," the new aide replied, consulting his glowing tablet. "No human ship has crossed the blockade in 50 years. Our sensors detect minimal activity in their system. Energy readings suggest their population has remained stable, possibly even declined." Zalthus nodded with satisfaction. As expected. Isolation breeds stagnation. Without access to galactic trade and knowledge, they have likely regressed to a simpler existence. What the Imperator did not know was that the sensors were only partly right. Human population in the Sol system had remained stable, but that was because most of humanity no longer lived in normal space. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Dr. Elena Vasquez had become an old woman. Her hair was gray now, and she moved more slowly than she once had. But her eyes still burned with the same fire they had 50 years ago. Around her, the dimensional engineering complex had grown into something that would have seemed impossible to her younger self. "Status report. Aria," she said to the air. A gentle voice responded from everywhere and nowhere. Aria was not just Elena's AI companion, but the coordinating intelligence for all of humanity's dimensional projects. Dimensional infrastructure is now complete across 23 pocket realms, Aria reported. Total human population across all dimensions has reached 847 billion individuals. Industrial capacity is now 340% of pre-isolation levels. Elena smiled. When the hegemony had trapped humanity in one star system, they had forced humans to think differently about space itself. If you could not expand outward, you expanded inward, into the spaces between spaces, into dimensions that existed parallel to normal reality. "What about our friends in the galaxy?" Elena asked. "Contact has been maintained with 17 oppressed species through quantum tunneling networks. We have provided technological assistance to 43 rebel groups. The Kethmori resistance has grown particularly strong with our support." Elena nodded. The hegemony thought they had cut humanity off from the galaxy. They had no idea that humans had found ways to reach anywhere in the universe through dimensional gates, ways that were completely invisible to their primitive sensors. Above her, in what the hegemony still thought was normal Sol system space, Captain Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance. To any external observer, his ship looked like a normal human vessel. The hegemony blockade had detected it and catalogued it as one of humanity's remaining ships. They had no idea that the Defiance existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, or that Captain Torres commanded not one ship but an entire fleet that existed in folded space. "Area, show me the dimensional map," Torres requested. the air in front of him filled with a complex display that would have been impossible for the hegemony to understand. Lines of light connected thousands of points across multiple realities. Each point was a dimensional anchor, a place where humanity had built facilities in pocket universes. The hegemony patrol ships are maintaining their usual patterns, Arya reported. They have no idea that we have 17 ships within a few kilometers of their positions. Torres smiled grimly. The hegemony blockade was like a fence built around a house, while the people inside had dug tunnels that led everywhere. Useless and pathetic. Meanwhile, in the outer territories of the hegemony, rebellion was growing. On the mining world of Kethmore, a young alien named Zixarath looked at the strange device his people had received from their mysterious benefactors. The humans had made contact with the Kethmori 3 years ago, not through ships or normal communication, but through tiny dimensional rifts that appeared in hidden locations. Through these rifts, the humans had passed weapons, technology, and most importantly, hope. The weapons they give us, Zixarath said to his fellow rebels, they work better than anything the hegemony has. Their tactics and intelligence are perfect. How do they know so much about our oppressors? His friend Veltar held up one of the human devices. It looked simple, but when activated, it could cut through hegemony armor like it was made of paper. I heard a rumor, he said quietly. Some say the humans have been watching the hegemony for decades. They know everything about our enemies. Zixarath shook his head in wonder. But how? They are trapped in their home system. Everyone knows this. What Zixarath did not know was that human observation posts existed in pocket dimensions throughout hegemony space. Invisible, undetectable, and constantly gathering information. The humans knew the position of every hegemony ship, the contents of every classified message, and the plans of every military operation. Back on the hegemony capital, Fleet Admiral Korthvan was becoming concerned. He stood before a huge tactical display showing the outer territories of their empire. Red markers indicated rebel activity, and there were far too many of them. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can contain it, he reported to the High Imperator. The rebels have weapons we do not understand. Their tactics suggest intelligence-gathering capabilities that should be impossible. Zalthus studied the display with growing irritation. What do you mean, impossible? They know our patrol routes before we establish them. They attack our supply convoys at the exact moment when our defenses are weakest. They disappear when we send reinforcements, as if they simply vanish into thin air. The Imperator's forearms gestured dismissively. Rebels have always used guerrilla tactics. This is nothing new. With respect, Imperator, this is very new. Yesterday, our fortress on Valthara detected rebel infiltrators inside their most secure areas. The security recordings show figures that appear and disappear like ghosts. And the weapons? Korthvan paused, looking uncomfortable. What about the weapons? They seem to exist partially outside normal space. Our shields cannot stop them. Our armor cannot protect against them. It is as if the rebels have learned to fight using the laws of physics themselves. Zalthus felt a cold sensation in his chest. Something about this situation reminded him of old words spoken by a human ambassador 50 years ago. Words about stars coming to them instead of them going to the stars. Have we detected any ships leaving the Sol system? He asked. None, Imperator. Our blockade remains perfect. The humans are still contained. But even as Korthvan spoke those words, human, soldiers were materializing in a hegemony weapons facility 3,000 light-years away. They appeared through dimensional rifts, completed their mission in minutes, and vanished back to their pocket universe before any alarm could be raised. On Earth, Sarah Chen's daughter, Admiral Rebecca Chen, stood in the command center that coordinated humanity's shadow war against the hegemony. She was older now than her mother had been during the famous confrontation, but she had inherited the same steel in her spine. Status of Operation Starfall, she requested. Phase 1 complete, reported her aide, a young man whose grandfather had worked with Dr. Vasquez. We have successfully contacted and armed rebel groups in 47 hegemony sectors. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Rebecca nodded. Phase 2 would be more aggressive. Instead of just supplying rebels, humanity would begin direct action against hegemony military targets. But still from the shadows, still through methods the aliens could not understand or counter. Any word from our deep space observers? The hegemony military is becoming increasingly frustrated. Admiral Korthvan has requested permission to investigate the Sol system directly. Rebecca smiled. After 50 years of preparation, humanity was almost ready. Ready to show the galaxy what they had become. Ready to end the hegemony's reign of oppression forever. But not yet. Let the aliens wonder. Let them worry. Let them make mistakes out of frustration and fear. In his private chambers, High Imperator Zalthes stood before a window looking out at the stars. The same stars his ancestors had conquered centuries ago. The same stars that had brought him wealth and power beyond imagination. But tonight, those stars seemed different somehow. Tonight they seemed to be watching him. His aide entered the room quietly. Imperator, Fleet Admiral Korthvan requests permission to investigate the source of the rebellion's advanced technology. And what does he propose? A direct inspection of the Sol system. He believes the humans may have found a way to communicate with the rebels despite our blockade. Zalthes considered this. The idea seemed ridiculous. The blockade had been perfect for 50 years. Nothing in, nothing out. The humans were trapped. But the rebels were getting help from somewhere. Technology and tactics that seemed impossible were spreading throughout the outer territories. If not from the humans, then from where? Tell Korthvan he has permission to investigate, Zalthes decided. But be discreet. We do not want to appear weak by admitting we cannot handle a few rebels. What the Imperator did not realize was that his decision would finally give humanity the excuse they had been waiting for. An excuse to stop hiding in the shadows. In the Dimensional Command Center, Admiral Rebecca Chen received the news with satisfaction. They are coming to us, she told her staff. After 50 years of isolation, they are finally coming to see what we have become. She opened a communication channel to Captain Torres and the Dimensional Fleet. All units, prepare for Phase 3. It is time to show the hegemony the price of their arrogance. In pocket dimensions throughout the galaxy, human fleets began to move. Ships that existed in folded space started emerging into normal reality. Weapons that operated on principles the hegemony could not understand powered up for the first time. The trap was ready. Soon the hegemony would learn the difference between imprisoning someone and imprisoning yourself. Fleet Admiral Korthvan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, as it approached the edge of the Sol system. Behind him stretched a fleet of 2,000 warships, the largest force the hegemony had assembled in decades. Every ship was equipped with the most advanced sensors and weapons the Empire possessed. Sensor report, he commanded. The system appears quiet, Admiral, his tactical officer reported. We detect minimal energy signatures. A few small ships near the inner planets, some orbital installations around Earth and Mars. Nothing that suggests a major military presence. Korthvan frowned. After 50 years of isolation, he had expected to find either a dead system or a fortress bristling with defenses. Instead, the Sol system looked almost empty. What about those energy readings we have been detecting over the years? Intermittent quantum fluctuations near the asteroid belt. Probably natural phenomena or primitive experiments with quantum technology. The Admiral was not satisfied. Something felt wrong about this whole situation. The rebels throughout the galaxy were using technology that seemed impossible, tactics that suggested perfect intelligence, and weapons that operated on principles the hegemony did not understand. If the humans were involved, where was their military? Take us into the system, he ordered. Full sensor sweep of everything. As the massive fleet crossed the boundary that had been forbidden for 50 years, none of them noticed the small ship that detached itself from a nearby asteroid. To their sensors, it appeared to be just another piece of space debris. But inside that ship, Admiral Rebecca Chen watched their approach with interest. Area. Are all units in position? She asked. Confirmed. All dimensional anchors are active. Fleet assets are distributed across 17 probability states. We are ready to implement Phase 3 on your command. Rebecca nodded. Not yet. Let them spread out through the system first. Let them think they are in control. Meanwhile, on the capital world of the hegemony, High Imperator Zalthes was dealing with increasingly desperate reports from the outer territories. The Kethmori rebellion had just captured their third military depot this week, and the attacks were becoming bolder. How is this possible? He demanded of his intelligence chief. They are primitives, mining slaves. How are they defeating our best troops? The intelligence chief, a nervous creature with too many eyes, shifted uncomfortably. The rebel weapons appear to be of unknown design, Imperator. They seem to phase through our shields and armor. Our scientists cannot explain how they work. Show me the security footage from the Valthara incident. The holographic display activated, showing the interior of what had been the hegemony's most secure weapons facility. The footage was disturbing. Figures appeared out of nowhere, moved through walls as if they were not there, and disappeared again after completing their mission. But the most disturbing part was that some of those figures looked human. Enhance Section 7, Zalthes ordered. The image zoomed in on one of the infiltrators. The face was partially obscured by some kind of advanced helmet, but the build and movement were unmistakably human. Impossible, the Imperator breathed. The humans are contained in their system. Our blockade has been perfect for 50 years. Perhaps, the intelligence chief suggested carefully, they have found a way to communicate with the rebels? Share technology through quantum transmission? Zalthes studied the image for a long moment. The figure moved with confidence and precision that spoke of direct involvement, not distant guidance. But how could humans be physically present in hegemony space when they were trapped thousands of light years away? Back in the Sol system, Korthvan's fleet had spread throughout the inner planets. Squadrons were investigating each world, each moon, each space station. The humans were cooperating fully, allowing the inspections without resistance. Captain Torres, aboard his ship near Earth, received a transmission from the hegemony flagship. Human vessel, prepare to be boarded for inspection. Of course, Torres replied politely. You are welcome aboard the Defiance. What the hegemony boarding party did not know was that the Defiance they would inspect was a carefully prepared facade. The real ship existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, with most of its mass and all of its weapons hidden in folded space. As the alien soldiers searched the ship, they found exactly what Torres wanted them to find. A small crew, limited, weapons and technology that seemed primitive compared to hegemony standards. This is what has us worried, one of the soldiers muttered to his companion. This barely qualifies as a warship. If only they knew that within arm's reach, invisible to their senses, lay weapons that could destroy their entire fleet in minutes. The inspection of the Sol system continued for 3 days. The hegemony found orbital habitats, mining operations, research stations, and shipping lanes. Everything looked normal for a civilization that had been isolated for 50 years. If anything, the humans seemed to have been weakened by their isolation. Korthvan was beginning to think the whole investigation had been a waste of time. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a priority message from the capital. The holographic image of High Imperator Zalthes appeared on the bridge. He looked angry and worried. Admiral, the Kethmori have just taken 3 more systems. The rebel advance is accelerating. Have you found any evidence of human involvement? None. Imperator. The Sol system appears to contain nothing more than a standard isolated civilization. Their technology is primitive. Their military is minimal. I see no way they could be supporting rebel operations thousands of light years away. Zalthes was quiet for a moment. Complete your investigation and return immediately. We need every ship to deal with the rebellion. But as the transmission ended, Korthvan noticed something odd. His sensor officer was frowning at his display. What is it? The Admiral asked. Sir, I am detecting strange quantum fluctuations throughout the system. They seem to be increasing in intensity. Increasing how? It is as if space itself is becoming unstable. The readings do not match any natural phenomenon in our database. Admiral Rebecca Chen, watching from her hidden ship, smiled. It was time. Area, initiate Phase 3. Full dimensional reveal. Confirmed. Beginning reality phase transition in 3, 2, 1. Throughout the Sol system, space began to change. The quantum fluctuations that the hegemony sensors had been detecting suddenly spiked to incredible levels. But these were not random events. They were doorways opening. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, alarms began sounding everywhere. "Admiral," the sensor officer shouted. "Unknown contacts appearing throughout the system, massive energy signatures." "How many?" Korthvan demanded. I cannot get an accurate count, sir. They are appearing faster than our computers can track them." Korthvan looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. Red dots were appearing everywhere. Not just a few dozen or even a few. 100. Thousands of contacts were materializing throughout the Sol system. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was that many of these contacts were appearing inside his own fleet formation. "Evasive action," he ordered. "All ships, emergency scatter." But it was too late. The human ships were not just appearing near the hegemony fleet. They were appearing between the hegemony ships around them, above and below them in three-dimensional space that suddenly did not seem to follow normal rules. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the Real Defiance as it phased into normal spacetime. Around him, his crew worked calmly at stations that would have seemed magical to the hegemony. Weapons that fired through folded space, shields that existed in multiple dimensions, engines that moved by adjusting the fabric of reality itself. Message from Admiral Chen, his communications officer reported. "Begin demonstration protocol." Torres nodded. "All weapons, minimum power. Target their engines and weapon systems only. We want to disable, not destroy." What followed was less a battle than a lesson in impossible technology. Human ships fired weapons that passed through hegemony shields as if they were not there. They moved in ways that violated basic physics, appearing and disappearing, attacking from angles that should not have existed. The hegemony ships tried to fight back, but their weapons simply passed through empty space where human ships had been milliseconds before. It was like trying to fight ghosts. Within an hour, every hegemony ship in the Sol system was disabled but intact. Their crews were alive but helpless, drifting in space while human vessels that should not have been able to exist surrounded them. Korthvan sat on his bridge staring in disbelief at the tactical display. His mighty fleet, the pride of the hegemony military, had been defeated without the loss of a single human ship. In fact, he was not even sure the humans had been trying very hard. A transmission came in from one of the impossible human vessels. "Admiral Korthvan, this is Admiral Rebecca Chen of the Terran Dimensional Fleet. Please prepare to receive a message for your High Imperator." The screen activated, showing a human woman who looked remarkably like the ambassador who had challenged the hegemony 50 years ago. "High Imperator Zalthus," she began. "My name is Rebecca Chen. My mother was Sarah Chen, the ambassador you exiled 50 years ago. I'm recording this message from the bridge of my flagship, currently located in 17 dimensions simultaneously within what you call forbidden space." She paused to let that sink in. "For 50 years, you believed you had trapped humanity in one star system. You thought isolation would make us weak. You were wrong about everything. While you built an empire across space, we built one across dimensions. While you conquered planets, we conquered reality itself." Behind her, Korthvan could see displays showing things that should not have been possible. Star charts that included dimensions beyond normal space, population figures that dwarfed the entire hegemony, industrial capacity that defied belief. "The rebellion in your outer territories is not just using our weapons," Chen continued. "They are fighting alongside our soldiers. We have been supporting oppressed species throughout your empire for decades, using methods you cannot detect or understand." The transmission showed footage from recent rebel victories, hegemony forces being defeated by tactics that seemed impossible, weapons that operated outside normal physics, and yes, human soldiers fighting side by side with alien rebels. You sought to cage us, Chen said, her voice growing stronger. But cages only work in 3 dimensions. You tried to limit us to one star system, never realizing we could make that one system larger than your entire empire. The message ended, with coordinates and a simple statement. We will be waiting. Korthvan sat in stunned silence. Around him, his bridge crew stared at displays showing human ships that should not have existed using technology that should not have been possible. Finally, his communications officer spoke in a whisper. Admiral, what do we do? Korthvan looked at the coordinates Chen had provided. They pointed to a location near Earth where the largest of the human ships waited. We go to the meeting, he said quietly, and we pray they are feeling merciful. As the disabled hegemony fleet was gently towed toward Earth by human vessels that existed in impossible ways, Korthvan finally understood what Sarah Chen had meant 50 years ago. They had not put humanity in a cage. They had locked themselves out of something far greater than they had ever imagined. Admiral Rebecca Chen stood in the meeting room that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Through the transparent walls, Fleet Admiral Korthvan could see impossible sights. Stars that moved in patterns that defied physics, structures that seemed to fold in on themselves, and ships that appeared to be the size of moons. Korthvan sat across from her, his 4 hands trembling slightly. He had commanded fleets across the galaxy, fought in dozens of wars, and conquered entire star systems, but nothing had prepared him for this. Do you understand what you are seeing? Chen asked gently. No. This violates everything we know about reality. Chen smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. Reality is much larger than your scientists believed. When you trapped us in one star system, you forced us to explore directions your people never imagined. We could not expand outward, so we expanded inward, into the spaces between spaces. She gestured to the walls around them. This room exists in normal space, but also in 6 parallel dimensions. From here, I can step through doorways that lead to any point in the galaxy. Distance has no meaning when you can move through folded reality. Korthvan tried to process this information. The rebel attacks throughout our empire, human soldiers traveling through dimensional gates. We have observation posts in pocket universes throughout hegemony space. We know the location of every ship you have, the contents of every classified message, the plans of every military operation. The Admiral felt sick. For how long? We made our first successful gate 23 years ago. Since then, we have been watching, learning, and preparing. The rebellion you are fighting is not just getting our weapons. They are getting our direct support. Chen stood and walked to one of the impossible windows. Outside, Korthvan could see what looked like an entire fleet of ships that dwarfed anything the hegemony had ever built. How many ships do you have? He asked weakly. In normal space? About 50,000 combat vessels. But that is not counting the ships that exist primarily in folded dimensions, or the industrial platforms that build new vessels faster than your empire builds shuttles. She turned back to him. Admiral, I want you to understand something important. We did not become this powerful to conquer your empire. We became this powerful to free the galaxy from your empire. Before Korthvan could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Chen's expression became serious as she listened to reports through her neural link. What is it? Korthvan asked. Your High Imperator has just made a very foolish decision. He has ordered a full military assault on our dimensional anchor points throughout the galaxy. Korthvan felt his heart sink. He does not understand what he is attacking. No, he does not. And now our peaceful approach has become impossible. Chen activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy in real time. Red dots throughout. Hegemony space indicated Imperial fleets moving to attack what they thought were rebel bases. What they were actually attacking were heavily defended dimensional gates protected by human forces they could not even detect. Admiral, I want you to watch what happens next. I want you to understand the choice your Imperator has made. The display zoomed in on a hegemony battle group approaching what their sensors showed as an empty asteroid field. In reality, it was the location of one of humanity's major dimensional stations. Human Commander Reynolds, Chen spoke to the air. You are authorized to defend your position with full force. The response came immediately. Understood, Admiral. Initiating Protocol 7. On the display, space around the hegemony fleet began to change. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with structures that materialized out of nowhere. Massive defense platforms, each one larger than a hegemony battleship, appeared in perfect formations around the attacking fleet. But the real shock came when the human defenders opened fire. The weapons that emerged from the dimensional platforms were unlike anything in the hegemony arsenal. Beams of energy that seemed to twist space itself, missiles that traveled through folded reality to strike targets from impossible angles, and defensive shields that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously. The hegemony fleet lasted exactly 4 minutes. They are all alive, Chen said quickly, seeing Korthvan's expression. Our weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. But Admiral, you need to understand that what you just witnessed was a minor engagement. We have installations like that throughout the galaxy, and many of them are much more heavily defended. She changed the display to show the entire galaxy. Hundreds of red dots indicated hegemony forces moving to attack dimensional positions, and at each location, the same scene was playing out. Massive human defenses appearing from nowhere, hegemony fleets being disabled in minutes. Your empire is attacking an enemy it cannot see, using weapons that cannot harm us in a war it cannot win, Chen said sadly. We tried to avoid this. Korthvan stared at the display in horror. You are destroying the entire Imperial Navy. We know, are disabling it. There is a difference, but Admiral, I need you to understand something else. The display changed again, showing not just the military engagements but civilian populations throughout the hegemony. In system after system, the oppressed species that had suffered under Imperial rule for centuries were rising up. And they were doing so with human support. The Keth Mori were just the beginning, Chen explained. We have been in contact with 47 different species that want freedom from your empire. While your fleets attack our military positions, our civilian support teams are helping entire worlds declare independence. She highlighted one system after another. The Veltai Collective, the Zorn Republic, the Free Miners of Kepler Station, all declaring independence today, all armed with human technology and protected by human dimensional gates. Korthvan watched his empire dissolving in real time, not through conquest, but through liberation. Species that had been subjects for centuries were suddenly free, and they had the technological support to defend that freedom. You have to understand, Chen continued, we are not your enemies. We are the enemies of oppression. For 300 years, your empire has ruled through fear and force. Today, that ends. But the economic systems, the trade routes, the stability, will all continue under the new galactic cooperative we are helping to establish. Admiral, we are not destroying civilization. We are freeing it. Chen activated another display, this one showing plans for a new galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. Democratic councils instead of imperial decree. Trade partnerships instead of tributary relationships. Mutual defense instead of military occupation. Every species that wants to join the cooperative will be welcome as an equal member, including the Zephyrians. Korthvan looked at her in shock. You would allow the imperial species to join, after everything we have done? The crimes of your government are not the crimes of your people. We believe in justice, not revenge. But there will be conditions. Chen's expression became serious. Complete disarmament of the Imperial Navy, war crimes trials for those responsible for the worst, oppression, reparations to the species you have harmed, and most importantly, a commitment to democracy and equality. Another alarm sounded and Chen listened to another report through her neural link. Admiral, your High Imperator has just ordered the use of planet-killer weapons against Earth. Korthvan felt his blood freeze. No, he cannot. The destruction of an entire world will not happen, Chen said firmly, but it does mean that negotiation is no longer possible. She opened a communication channel that reached across the galaxy instantly through dimensional networks. All units, this is Admiral Chen. The hegemony has escalated to weapons of mass destruction. Implement Protocol 9 immediately. Korthvan did not know what Protocol 9 was, but he was about to find out. Throughout hegemony space, dimensional gates began opening on a scale never before seen. Not just small portals for ships or supplies, but massive rifts in space-time itself. And through these rifts came not just human forces, but entire fleets from dozens of liberated species. The Veltai brought their gravity manipulation ships. The Zorn contributed their quantum disruptors. The Kethamori added their newly upgraded mining lasers that could cut through anything. And coordinating them all were human commanders with technology that made every weapon more effective and every defense impenetrable. But the most shocking sight was on the display showing Earth itself. The planet-killer missile launched by the hegemony was moving toward its target at incredible speed. But as it approached Earth, something impossible happened. The missile simply stopped. Not destroyed, not deflected. Stopped, as if it had hit an invisible wall. Earth exists in protected dimensional space, Chen explained to the stunned Admiral. Physical attacks from normal space cannot reach it. The missile is now trapped in a dimensional bubble where it will remain harmlessly until we decide what to do with it. She turned to face him directly. Admiral, I am going to offer you a choice. You can return to your High Imperator with a message of surrender and cooperation, or you can remain here and watch as we complete the liberation of the galaxy without hegemony cooperation. Korthvan looked at the displays showing his empire crumbling, his fleets disabled, and his people facing a choice between freedom and destruction. What message would you have me deliver? Chen's expression softened. That the age of empire is over, that the age of cooperation has begun, and that he has one last chance to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. She handed him a data crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. This contains our formal proposal for the transition to the Galactic Cooperative. It also contains evidence of every war crime committed by the Imperial government over the past 3 centuries. Your choice is simple. Help us build a better galaxy, or face trial for the crimes of the old one. Korthvan took the crystal with shaking hands. And if he refuses? Chen looked out at the impossible structures surrounding them, at the fleets that existed in multiple dimensions, at the industrial capacity that dwarfed entire star systems. Then we will complete the liberation without him. The only question is whether the Zephyrian people will be free citizens of the new galaxy or the last subjects of a dead empire. As Korthvan prepared to leave, he turned back to Chen one last time. How did you do it? How did you become so powerful in just 50 years? Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like her mother had in that famous confrontation decades ago. You taught us the most important lesson in the universe, Admiral. You taught us that the only cage that truly holds is the one you build in your own mind. When you forced us to think beyond normal space, you freed us from every limitation we thought we had. She gestured to the impossible vista around them. You tried to trap us in one star system. Instead, you showed us how to make one star system contain infinite possibilities. High Imperator Zalthes sat alone in his vast throne room, staring at the data crystal fleet Admiral Korthvan had brought back from the Sol system. Around him, the palace that had been the center of galactic power for 3 centuries felt empty and cold. The reports coming in from across the Empire were all the same. Fleet after fleet disabled, system after system declaring independence, entire sectors joining something called the Galactic Cooperative. In 3 days, the mighty hegemony had crumbled like a house made of sand. Imperator, his aide said quietly, President Santos is here for the meeting. Zalthes looked up at the aide, a young Zephyrian who had never known anything but imperial rule. Soon, that would change forever. Send her in. The doors to the throne room opened, but instead of the large delegation Zalthes had expected, only one human entered. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations or symbols of rank. President Maria Santos walked across the vast chamber alone, her footsteps echoing in the silence. When she reached the center of the room, She stopped and looked up at the Imperator on his crystal throne. "High Imperator Zalthus," she said formally. "I am Maria Santos, President of the Terran Federation and current rotating chair of the Galactic Cooperative Council." Zalthus studied her face. She looked remarkably like the ambassador who had challenged him 70 years ago, and like the admiral who had destroyed his empire 3 days ago. "You are related to Sarah Chen," he said. "She was my grandmother." This meeting is something she always hoped would happen, though perhaps not under these circumstances. Santos looked around the throne room with its massive pillars and floating crystal decorations. Impressive architecture, but rather lonely, don't you think? All this space for one person. Despite everything, Zalthus felt a flicker of his old arrogance. "I am the ruler of 2,847 star systems and 400 billion subjects." "Actually," Santos said gently, "as of this morning, you rule 127 star systems and about 12 billion people. The rest have joined the cooperative." The words hit Zalthus like physical blows. In 3 days he had lost 95% of his empire. "How?" he asked quietly. Santos activated a small holographic projector that showed the galaxy in real time. Most of it now glowed green, indicating cooperative membership. Only a small cluster of systems around the hegemony capital remained red. "Your empire was held together by fear and force," she explained. "The moment we offered the subject species a choice, they chose freedom. We didn't conquer your empire, Imperator. We simply gave it the opportunity to leave." "And my fleets?" "Disabled, not destroyed. Every crew member is alive and unharmed. Most of them have already requested asylum in cooperative space." Zalthus felt something he had never experienced before: complete helplessness. "What do you want from me?" Santos deactivated the hologram and looked directly at him. "We want you to make a choice. The same choice we have offered every species in the galaxy." She gestured to the empty throne room. "You can continue to rule over what remains of your empire through fear and oppression. You can try to rebuild your military and attack the cooperative. You can spend the rest of your life fighting a war you cannot win." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "Or you can join us. Help us build something better than any empire that has ever existed." "Join you?" Zalthus asked incredulously. "I am the High Imperator of the Zephyrian Hegemony." "Title that means nothing now," Santos replied calmly. "But Maria Santos, President of Earth, is also just a title. In the cooperative, leadership is earned through service, not inherited through blood or taken through conquest." She activated the hologram again, this time showing the structure of the new galactic government. "Every species has representatives on the council. Every world has a voice in decisions that affect them. No one species rules over the others." "Chaos," Zalthus said dismissively. "How can 400 billion beings be governed by committee?" "The same way 4 billion humans governed themselves before we met you," Santos replied. "Through democracy, cooperation, and mutual respect." She changed the display to show Earth, but not as Zalthus remembered it. The planet was surrounded by structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Cities that extended into pocket universes. Space elevators that led to orbital habitats the size of continents. "This is what we built while you had us trapped in one star system," Santos said. "Not through conquest or oppression, but through cooperation between humans and AIs, between scientists and engineers, between dreamers and builders." "Your artificial intelligences," Zalthus said with distaste. "You treat machines as if they were alive." "Because they are alive," Santos replied simply. "Arya, would you like to introduce yourself?" A gentle voice filled the throne room from everywhere and nowhere. "High Imperator Zalthus, I am Arya, the coordinating intelligence for the Terran Federation. I am honored to meet you." Zalthus looked around in confusion. "Where is it? Where is the machine?" "I exist in quantum networks throughout human space," Arya explained. "I am not bound to a single location or body. I am here but also in 847 other places simultaneously." "You see," Santos said, "when you free minds from the limitations of bodies, when you free ideas from the constraints of prejudice, When you free cooperation from the burden of hierarchy, amazing things become possible. She walked closer to the throne. Imperator, your people are not evil. They are not inherently different from humans or any other species. They have simply been taught to believe that domination is the only form of security. It has worked for 3 centuries. Has it? Your people live in fear of rebellion. Your military lives in fear of defeat. You live in fear of losing power. Is that really the life you want for your species? Santos activated another display, this one showing Zephyrian colonies that had already joined the cooperative. Look at your own people who have chosen freedom. They are working alongside species they once oppressed. They are building things instead of destroying them. They are learning instead of commanding. Zalthus stared at the images. His own people laughing and working with aliens they had once considered inferior. It looked peaceful. What would happen to me, he asked quietly. That depends on your choice, Santos replied. If you choose to continue fighting, you will face trial for war crimes. The evidence of atrocities committed by your government is overwhelming. She paused, letting that sink in. But if you choose to help us build the cooperative, if you genuinely commit to peace and democracy, then you would be offered the same protection as any other citizen. I would go from ruling an empire to being a common citizen. You would go from being isolated by power to being connected by purpose. Santos corrected. Imperator, when was the last time you had a real conversation with someone who was not afraid of you? The question caught Zalthus off guard. He thought about it for a long moment and realized he could not remember. The loneliness of absolute power, Santos said softly, is one of the cruelest prisons ever invented. We are offering you freedom from that prison. She gestured around the empty throne room. You can keep this throne, this palace, this isolation. You can rule over the few systems that remain loyal out of fear. You can spend your life fighting to maintain a dying empire. She walked to one of the massive windows that looked out over the capital city. Or you can help us build something that will last for millennia. Something based on cooperation instead of conquest. Something your descendants will be proud of instead of ashamed of. Zalthus stood up from his throne and walked down to stand beside her at the window. Below them, the city spread out in all directions. But he could see the signs of change already. Ships landing with cooperative representatives. Crowds of his own people gathering to hear about the new government. Children playing with alien toys that had somehow appeared in the markets. If I agreed, he said slowly, what would happen to my empire? It would be dissolved peacefully. Your remaining military would be integrated into the cooperative defense force. Your people would be granted full citizenship rights. Your worlds would have representation on the council proportional to their population. And the crimes of my government would be addressed through truth and reconciliation processes, not mass punishment. We believe in justice, not revenge. Santos turned to face him directly. Imperator, your grandmother Sarah Chen said something to your predecessor 70 years ago. She said you could forbid us the stars, but you could not forbid the stars from coming to us. She smiled. She was right. You tried to cage us, but instead you freed us to become something greater than either of our species could achieve alone. Now we are offering you the same freedom. Zalthus looked out at his city one more time. At the palace that had been his prison as much as his throne. At the empire that had given him power but stolen his humanity. What do I need to do? Santos handed him a simple document written in multiple languages. Sign the Treaty of Galactic Cooperation. Formally dissolve the hegemony. And help us explain to your people that they are not losing an empire. They are gaining a galaxy. Zalthus took the document and read it carefully. It was nothing like the treaties he was used to, full of threats and demands and subordination clauses. Instead, it was an invitation to join something larger than any empire, stronger than any military force, and more enduring than any conquest. He placed his 4 hands on the signing surface and watched as his biometric signature was recorded. The Zephyrian hegemony officially ended at 1427 Galactic Standard Time. What happens now? He asked. Now we build, Santos replied. The first Galactic Cooperative Assembly will convene in 6 months. Every species will send representatives. Every world will have a voice. And for the first time in galactic history, decisions will be made by cooperation instead of conquest. She walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, an Imperator? You might want to consider running for office. The Zephyrian Federation will need good leaders, and despite everything, you do have experience in large-scale administration. After she left, Zalthus stood alone in his throne room for the last time. Tomorrow it would become a museum, a reminder of how power without purpose becomes its own destruction. He walked to the window and looked up at the stars. For 3 centuries, his people had claimed to own those stars. Now he understood the difference between owning and belonging. The stars had never belonged to any empire, but perhaps finally, the empire could belong to the stars. 6 months later, the first Galactic Cooperative Assembly convened in a space station that existed partially in 17 dimensions. Representatives from 847 species gathered to write the constitution for a new kind of civilization. Former High Imperator Zalthus sat with the Zephyrian delegation, no longer a ruler but a participant. Across the assembly hall, he could see President Santos working with representatives from dozens of species to draft legislation that would benefit everyone. When the assembly voted to establish the first transgalactic dimensional gate network, allowing any being to travel instantly between any worlds in the galaxy, the vote was unanimous. As Zalthus cast his vote with all the others, he finally understood what Sarah Chen had meant 70 years ago. They had not forbidden humanity the stars. They had forbidden themselves the infinite possibilities that came with true freedom. But that was over now. The age of empires had ended. The age of cooperation had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.